Illinois lawmakers are headed back to Springfield next week to finish out their fall veto session. On the agenda, funding public transportation, regulating hemp sales, and managing energy reform, just to name a few.
So let's talk about the final week of the Illinois fall veto session, shall we? Policy nerds, thank you for tuning in to the Cole Memo. Up until recently, so we're going to talk about what it could mean for cannabis policy, first of all. And up until recently, most of the coverage of this year's session has focused on transit funding, energy issues, and even state-level fallout from national politics. But one topic that's now starting to make its way back into the media coverage, or at least from that one source that we just saw, are discussions around federally legal cannabis products, better known as hemp, which could have ripple effects for both consumers and small businesses across the state of Illinois. Once again, you're tuned into the Cole Memo, and you can find all of my content at colememo.com. The show is recorded live to tape, which means your comments can be a part of the conversation. As I go through this story, please comment below. We may display your comments on screen. You can also call in at colememo.com/live. I'll have that link ready here in just a moment. So the veto session is short, and it's typically used for overriding the governor's vetoes, making budget adjustments, and addressing last-minute policy changes. The final meetings for this veto session are set to occur on October 28th through the 30th. There was some meetings last week. From what I understand, I don't think the Senate even got together. The House did, but nothing moved forward. Based on the conversations I've had with people in Springfield, it does not sound like any major cannabis measures will move forward this time. Whether we're talking removing law enforcement's ability to search your vehicle based on the smell of unburnt cannabis alone, which is something we've covered for quite a while on this show, that's not going to be moving forward. And to be clear, aside from the issue that I just mentioned, there really aren't meaningful reforms that would affect consumers that are, I should just say, that are part of meaningful discussions. We did see some policy proposals like the proposal to increase plant count for medical patients. I'd call that meaningful. There were a few other proposals that seemed nice, but from what I understand, there haven't been serious discussions about those proposals, which is a important distinction. You know, policy can be proposed, but whether or not it's actually discussed is I guess the important part. So necessary changes like ending the continued criminalization of cannabis, allowing all adults to home grow, or other changes that advocates have been calling for since legalization took effect. None of that's part of the conversation. Instead, lawmakers are prioritizing transit, energy, and budget issues. Big picture stuff. I mean, I'm not trying to negate those things. I just am being honest about what's on the table here. I've been told by several sources that hemp regulation likely would not come up during this session. And in some cases, I was told that new legislation was being held for the next session. That said, everything can change at a moment's notice in Springfield, Illinois. Recent reporting raised the subject of hemp regulations with Illinois House Representative Cam Buckner.
So Governor Pritzker has also been pushing for hemp regulation for months now. Representative Buckner, do you think hemp should be, speaking of government regulation, should there be more regulation for hemp?
Yeah, we have to deal with this because we know what's happening with intoxicating hemp across this country, but specifically in Illinois, is that young people are getting a hold of it. It's doing bad things to them physically and from a health perspective. And so we have to get a hold of what's happening here. What I will say is there has to be also a way to balance this. What you're hearing is that a lot of minority folks who don't feel like they have an actual lane into the legal cannabis space are in the hemp space. And they want to be a part of the commerce and economic development in that space as well, right? And so we've got to find a way to balance this, to land this plane so that we are keeping young people safe, but we're also not shutting down businesses and giving people a chance to operate.
1 minute left.
So that second half of the statements we just heard Illinois House Representative Cam Buckner say, you know, the concerns about shutting down small businesses and people that are just trying to be honest and make a buck. That really echoes what we heard from House Speaker Chris Welch during the last legislative session.
Welch says tensions ran high due to lingering bad feelings about the lack of minority ownership in the legal cannabis system.
There's a perception that the social equity program was not done correctly in the cannabis space. And here we have an industry where there are a lot of black and brown owners currently in existence, and the legislation that's currently proposed would literally put those people out of business right now. And it would turn it over to the cannabis people.
So, in case you don't know or haven't been paying attention, this is something we've covered on the show. But just to recap for folks that aren't in this, I know that things move fast, and sometimes policy can be boring to follow. Frankly, this topic heated up during a previous legislative session when Governor Pritzker threw his support behind a measure that critics argued would criminalize all sales of THC products from being sold anywhere but the small and tightly controlled number of Illinois dispensaries. Critics also pointed out that the measure would have imposed $10,000 daily fines. That's $10,000 fines that could be wagered on you daily, on top of the pre-existing criminal penalties that never were addressed with the legalization of cannabis in Illinois. The criminalization of cannabis very much so continues. And in doing so, if this legislation would have come to pass, it would have significantly increased penalties for the cultivation, processing, and sale of cannabis flower, concentrates, and infused products. The measure ultimately failed due to the lack of support from the legislature.
The governor thought he had 60 House Democratic votes for the measure. Welch says that's not true.
It wasn't even close. The governor gave us a roll call. He knew beforehand that we were going to verify that roll call, and that roll call wasn't even close.
The governor told reporters that during a private House Democratic caucus, officials from his administration were verbally abused by lawmakers, and he blames Welch for not intervening.
Why did the governor's members of his team leave out of that meeting in tears?
Well, listen, the governor wasn't present in our caucus meeting, and it got a little emotional. I did talk to those members immediately after caucus. And it's my understanding they reached out to those staffers immediately after I talked to them. Caucus, it gets emotional sometimes.
So, thank you everybody that has been tuning in and dropping comments. I really appreciate it. It does remain unclear whether or not we'll see action on hemp or cannabis policy during the veto session. In any case, we'll keep you apprised of all developments related to Illinois cannabis policy right here on the Cole Memo. Even if cannabis reform doesn't move forward this month, these conversations could set the stage for the spring session, when lawmakers will once again have the opportunity to revisit the direction of cannabis policy in Illinois. And on that note, I will say that I will be having an elected representative on the show soon. It's been a while since we've had elected representatives on the show. We'll be talking to one that has been very much involved in cannabis policy and getting their thoughts on the matter. But now I want to know, what are your thoughts? What do you think? Is Illinois stalling on needed cannabis reform? Or is this like sort of a strategic patience while the state figures out how all of these facets of our cannabis policy should fit together in a way that's beneficial to both small and large businesses, and perhaps most importantly, cannabis consumers? Am I being a little too optimistic with that question? Some people did drop some thoughts, and I'll start to read them. Please comment below and we can display your thoughts. You can also call into the show at colememo.com/live. It's very easy to join. You don't have to turn your video on. You don't even have to tell us your real name, though I would appreciate, we should, give me a first name or a nickname or something. You can call in once again at colememo.com/live. Super easy to call in. We have people call in. We've been having people call in, which is cool. Genetic Memory Farm says, "Good day, peeps. I hope you're all safe and stoned." I right back at you. So our friend Birdie says, "Patients' ability to shop at adult use stores with discounts is necessary." And I think what you mean is, in case listeners aren't aware, medical patients can only go to one of the 55 dispensaries to buy cannabis at the medical tax rate. If you go to one of the adult use cannabis stores, even though they sell all of the same products, you cannot purchase the cannabis at the medical cannabis tax rate from an adult use cannabis store. What some of these stores are doing to sort of offset that is giving a sort of discount at checkout. But at the end of the day, you're still paying that adult use tax. And there have been proposals, which is what Birdie is referring to make it so that medical patients could shop at any dispensary in the state of Illinois if they provide at the medical cannabis tax rate, if they provide their medical cannabis card, which makes sense because, again, it's all the same. If you go to a dual use dispensary, which means they have both a medical and adult use dispensary. From what I understand, if you see anything, and I've talked to regulators about this, and I've even talked to the cannabis businesses about this. They've told me, if you see anything on the adult use menu and you're at a dual use dispensary, in other words, again, one with both a medical license and an adult use license, you can pick anything off of the adult use menu and buy it at that medical cannabis tax rate. First of all, businesses told me there should never be, the businesses I spoke to told me there should never be a scenario where there's something on the adult use menu that's not on their medical cannabis menu. But in the case that they are, from what they tell me, they should be able to switch it over. So, Birdie asks, are there any medical only dispensaries or are they all dual? I think they are all dual. I could be wrong. Please comment below, folks, if you know more than me. I believe that they're all dual because the original 55 dispensaries were given the ability to have an adult use license at their medical establishment. They were also given the ability to open up another establishment. So they got a +1 license. They were able to open up another standalone dispensary that was adult use only. So great question just came in from Genetic Memory Farms. How about we establish a caregiver program like Michigan had? The poorest patients cannot afford to buy medicine at retail. So why not? I agree with you. I completely agree with you. This should absolutely be something that we allow in Illinois. Unfortunately, the Illinois cannabis program does seem to be really focused on profits, and so I don't know how else to put it. Our regulators point to Michigan in that caregiver model, and they say that Michigan's a failure. That's what our regulators have said in the past, because they believe that all sales should happen via the point of sale, via seed to sale, that all sales should be tracked and taxed. And that's a regulator, right? So Brandon says, I am a licensed caregiver in Illinois. We just need to expand the program. Absolutely. And, one of the things that I sort of was alluding to earlier that I don't know that maybe it wasn't clear that I was alluding to it. So I'll make this brief. But if you look at the Illinois cannabis law, and I'll pull it up right now and put it on screen so that we all know how to look at the Illinois cannabis law. So I'm Googling Illinois CRTA cannabis law, and I'm trying to find it. Let's throw it up on our screen. Maybe. There we go. All right. Not finding it, but let's ilga.gov. It's Cannabis Control Act. This one at the top is where all of the penalties were established, and the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act is what supposedly legalized cannabis. But again, I'm going to stress this law that was made in 1978, the Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act, did not repeal most of the criminal penalties within that act. So that's why I always say legalization in air quotes, if you didn't know, because I don't think cannabis is legal until you can buy, grow, sell, use, possess, gift as much as you want, need, or please. And I may have missed a few things there, but that's generally speaking what I say. Okay, so let's look this up. So we're on the cannabis law, and I'm looking up agent. We're on the Illinois General Assembly's website. Actually, I'm searching up registered agent. And let's see here. Maybe that's not it. Temporary medical patient. Sorry, folks. We're trying to find this here. 5 plants. How about we do that? Okay. So we're looking at the home grow section. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And you can see that it says cannabis plants may only be tended by registered qualifying patients who reside at their residence, or, now right away, or as I always like to say, if it's, if the plants can be tended by the registered patient, or that means somebody else can tend to the plants, their authorized agent attending to their resident for brief periods, such as when the qualifying patient is temporarily away from the residence. I've asked the state of Illinois, what is an authorized agent? Is that your caregiver? The state responded and said the term authorized agent is not defined in the law. What I propose is that, and I've proposed this to advocacy groups in the past, is that we change the word registered agent. Well, we change the word agent to caregiver. And then, boom, the problem is solved. You can have caregivers tending to your plants. I will acknowledge that for brief periods, such as when the qualifying patient is temporarily away from the residence, could probably be struck. Why does it have to only be for brief periods? What if the patient is needs a caregiver? Typically, when a patient has a caregiver, they need a caregiver and they can't grow their own plants. I'm just saying. I don't want to make assumptions here, but I think that the flexibility should be given there, especially for somebody with a registered caregiver. But I am on my soapbox here, folks. Any other thoughts before we keep this show moving and discuss the allegations of mislabeled products on Illinois cannabis dispensary shelves? Any other thoughts? Once again, you can call into the show at colememo.com/live. It's been a while since we've had a live caller. Would love it if somebody could call in. All right. Well, I think we'll keep the show moving. K and MJ squared. I'm not sure what you're saying. That would be ideal for hemp producers like myself. I'm not sure what you're referencing there. Maybe you're behind on the show. Feel free to clarify. But I guess what we'll do is we'll keep things moving. Yeah, let's just keep things moving. Up next, we're going to be discussing the allegations of mislabeled products on the shelves of Illinois dispensaries. Let's do it.